Hello, hello. I think we're live here. This whole streaming game is still extremely new for me. All right, let's see. Let me jump over to the comments, see if we got anyone in here. Hey, Alex is here. Alex, can you hear me okay? I think we've got about a 15 second delay, so I'll give you a second here. Looks and sounds great. All right, cool. Well, so I've streamed one other time before, and I don't think I had any audience, so I've got at least one person here watching. So this is cool. This is interesting. Let's see here. I might have to set up. It looks like OBS lost some of these connections here. All right. I think we got that working. Chat's not available. What's going on with chat? All right, let me see if I can get this chat working real quick. There we go. We've got chat. I've got Figma. I've got me there in the corner. All right, we're going to do this. All right, so what I was thinking about doing today, this is what I've got up here on screen. This is it was a project I worked on a couple years ago. I've been working on my portfolio, making some updates to my website. So I had this file open, and I thought maybe it would be cool to kind of explore some of the stuff I built. This was actually originally built in Sketch. Like I said, I was working on my portfolio, so I brought some of these assets in, and I was, exporting some graphics and stuff, making some tweaks. But this is a screen. This is an app called OptUp. It's still available in the App Store. This is an early screen. This is not what the app looks like today, but so essentially the app OptUp is for, there's a grocery store chain. It's one of the largest grocers in the country, but they wanted to kind of encourage their customers to shop for healthier groceries, more nutritious kind of groceries. So what the app has, it tracks everything you buy. They have a thing called a Kroger Plus card. Kroger's the name of the company, but they have a thing called a Kroger Plus card that you scan every time you shop. You get discounts, kind of a loyalty program. But so that's how OptUp knows all the stuff that you buy. And then all the food items that you buy from them are rated from 1 to 100. Lower or higher being a healthier score, lower being a less healthy score. So they would rate all your food items, or all the food items were rated, and then based on what you bought, it would give you kind of an overall score for your household health score. That's what we called it. At least in the early days, that's what we called it. So it's almost like a credit rating, for your grocery shopping. And so all the items, they were scored 1 to 100, and then we kind of categorized those into these three kind of buckets. The lowest end, this would be stuff like, Twinkies, Oreos, Doritos, snacks, things that had a lot of, sugar and fat, that kind of stuff. Those would be red, and those were anywhere from like 1 to 33. I think some of these values changed over time as we kind of developed the product. But then you had this kind of like middle of the road yellow scored items that would be like 34 to 69. And then the green items, the healthy items, the things they wanted to try to get you to buy more of, that would be anything from 70 to 100. So anyway, so what I wanted to do today, so I was kind of looking back through my old portfolio assets and stuff. I was going to build kind of this little section here, and it kind of begs to be animated. So another aspect of the app, which I thought was interesting, we had two kind of viewpoints into your data. We had a short term, like 2-week period, and then we had a longer term 12-week period. And you could toggle back and forth between these two views. And I realized, like in these two screens here, the data is not accurate. The scores that are represented are not accurate. So we'll fix some of that stuff here when I get started. But essentially, you had these two views, a short-term view and a long-term view. So you can make a comparison to see, like, how am I doing today versus how I've been doing over a longer period of time. And being able to toggle between those and have some animation between these two views, I think could be really helpful. Now, at the time when we were developing this app, we were just trying to get an MVP out into the app stores. Didn't have it was a small team, not a lot of time, not a lot of budget. So we forewent a lot of the kind of animations and other types of enhancements. So with that long, hey, we've got Ficrit. Oh boy, I probably just how do you pronounce that? From Turkey, Ficrit from Turkey is in here. So it looks like we might have two people in here. Cool. Yeah, so let's get started. We're going to do this from scratch. So I'm going to go into a brand new document in Figma here. And I'm not sure the best way. I'm using OBS to broadcast this, and I've got a couple different kind of viewports set up. And one of those, what you're seeing now, has the chat visible, but actually on my screen I don't actually see it. So I might have to figure out a way to be able to pop that up. So I will hopefully continue to look over to the chat and see if you guys have questions. Feel free to jump in with any questions or comments or tips or whatever. But yeah, let's just get started here. So we're going to. So I also have a phone attached, and I think I can bring this up. I have to launch QuickTime. And do a screen recording. So if I pop this over here, that should be my phone. Let's just do a quick test here. Look at that. Okay, so I've got my phone there. So we've got that set up. That works. Let's go back to the chat. So if you can't tell already, this streaming stuff is all brand new for me. So anyway, let's get started. So let's start with a circle, right? One of the things that I really liked about Figma early on was when I discovered the functionality, this thing where you can kind of create these quick arcs and it's a much easier way to create these little kind of like circular data visualization things, and then you can kind of come in here and adjust that kind of inside radius, and that's kind of the core of how we're going to build this thing. Now you might think you could also do this with a stroke. But then, and there's, you could do it this way, but I think it'll make it a little bit more challenging to, animate and then also kind of iterate on these very quickly. I don't think you could make some of the necessary adjustments in a component-like system. So let's get rid of the stroke. And we'll try to do this quickly, but also we're gonna we'll componentize some of these things. All right, so let's go in here. Whoops. You're also going to see how rusty I am. Let's delete that and start over. At least I think this is the best way to make it. All right. So we've got, let's see, we'll make these numbers even here. We'll do 75%. So maybe we'll go to 80%. And then we're going to, let's name this. We'll call this like maybe base or, yeah, we'll call this base. We'll go ahead and duplicate it, and we'll call this fill. And let's go ahead and get we'll start with the red. It's not a great red. We can adjust this later. Actually, I want to go back because I don't know if I did do it this way. I think I may have used... Okay, so for the fill, I did use the stroke, but it was still... All right, we're going to figure this out on the fly. I made it a while ago. And, all right. Yeah, there we go. So we can do that. We're going to do the same thing. We want to get the starting point up here at the top, and we're going to go clockwise. And we'll just start there with a 25% fill. And this will be nice because, and we can't, so Figma has like an auto animate feature that you can use in prototyping. But right now Figma doesn't allow these values to be animated. At least I believe that's still true. But Figmotion plugin that we'll pull up here in a little bit, that actually does allow you to animate those, which is pretty slick. Anyway, so we've got the base, we've got the fill. I think we could even round these corners. I think that's how I got that, kind of softer aesthetic. And then you could imagine, being able to, we'll componentize this so that we can make these adjustments here. So another thing that we showed in our little component here was, so there was each of these color categories had like a target. So for the lower, the red scoring items, you were supposed to go for like 10% of your purchases or less should fall in that red. Let me back out here. And then about 40% for yellow, and then try to get more than 50% of your green items to be in your purchases. So we're going to include that as well. And if I recall, I came up with maybe a somewhat interesting way to get those to rotate. Let's give this a little bit of a dark gray fill. We'll round those corners as well. Probably a little bit too wide. Maybe it's out 3 points wide and maybe 16 tall. So now we want to make this thing so we can very easily kind of rotate it, but we want to make sure that it rotates around the same circle, the same center that these circles are. Otherwise, it'll look kind of weird. Let's go ahead and rename this. We'll call this target. Yeah, just target's fine. So I think what we're going to do, I'm going to draw a frame, 100 by 100, because that's going to be the same as the circles. We don't need a fill on it. And we're going to put that target in that frame. And what we'll do is, while we're here, we're going to go ahead and make all this other stuff into a frame, which we'll call this, we'll just call it a ring. Name this target. We'll turn that clip content off so it can stick, outside. And that, having this kind of offset, I mean, this thing could go kind of anywhere outside of that frame, but the fact is that frame it still has the same center point as everything else here, So like as we rotate it, it'll, it's going to rotate around that circle. That makes sense. If we made this, like that, now all of a sudden we've changed the, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I wanted to do it on the, this is just going to rotate around its own circle. Hopefully that's pretty clear what I'm doing here. Let's go look at the comments. Anything? We've got Pranjal. I should just stop trying to pronounce these names that I've never pronounced before. Anyway, hello. This is awesome. Let's see. All right, so we've got our target here, which again is going to rotate nicely. Let's see, what else do we have? We had a couple labels in there. We've got so this is the user's percentage, and then a label that indicates what the target should be. So let's go ahead and include those as well. We'll just do that again, 25. And actually I'm going to do this. I'm going to use a little auto layout here. Because I think this, if I recall, this helped a little bit. Let's get this out of here. I'm going to start up here. All right, so we're going to try to be smart about this as well and use some styles, color styles and whatnot. And I'm going to make this the same color, so that already tells me like, hey, we should probably get a style here, and then that allows us to make fine adjustments as we go. And let's see, it looks like I've got some things here that I don't necessarily want on. We can turn these off. That's fine. So let's call this red for now. It's fine. It's probably not a great long-term name for a project, but for the purposes of this stream, we'll just call it red. All right, so now we've got red. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create separate text layers for the percentage, like the value, and then the actual percentage mark. And it's such a quick, I don't know, tip or whatever, but it makes it a lot easier to go in and just quickly double click, select all the entire label, and then you can change it without having to like unselect that guy there. And we can just make it an auto frame so that it's dynamic. So let's go back and see where that landed. We probably want this above all of that. We'll name this label, and we could even name these like value and then percentage. I do get a little bit OCD about my layer names. We're using Roboto right now. That's fine. We're going to want these to be set to center. Whoops. Oh, yeah. When I was playing around with the resize, we kind of screwed this up here. So kind of a quick way I'm going to fix this. I'm just going to take everything out of here. There's a couple ways you can do this, but sometimes this is the easiest. I'm going to just set this back and take all of this stuff and get it back in there. So now we can go ahead and center that up, and we're good. All right, let's see. We also had a label. Whoops. We had a label for the target. So let's go ahead and include that as well. We'll say 10. And these, let's do it the same way. We'll go, so that'll be value. This can also, like, when you kind of organize your files and your labels like this, it also helps if you're using any like dynamic data plugins, Google, syncing with like Google Sheets and stuff like that. Maybe you have a label value, a numerical value, having these different actual, Figma layers, text layers, you can bet, it makes it a lot easier to assign these kind of things, if that makes sense. So we're going to call this 10, what did I say? 10% we'll do target. So we probably want to set this to center. These two can probably be center. All right, so we'll make this an auto layout. And then this will be centered, so make these guys auto layouts. So basically what I have here, I've got, we'll call this the let's see, value, label, and then we've got, the numeric value, and then the indicator. So, if we do it at this kind of atomic level, this, we could reuse this elsewhere as well. All right, let's go ahead and set this this dark gray as a color here. We'll call this like label label primary. So now we can set all of this as well to that label primary. All right, also way too big. Maybe 14, maybe even go like 12. Let's go ahead and figure out where to get this guy situated. Let's just first move it. Let's call this main label. These are not great names, but we can fix later. And then target label, maybe, whatever. Go ahead and center that up. Get this up a little bit. So auto layout also gives you some default padding, which I think is coming into play here. No, what's going on here? No, I guess that's just like the letters or the line height doing that. Okay, I think we're fine. These can probably be, if we're gonna use Roboto, maybe we go medium. I still feel like these are a little bit big. What I should also do is set this to be centered. I'm trying to think if that was the right color or not. Anyway. All right, so we've got this component almost finished. Okay, we also need the labels down here indicating kind of the score range. We can just kind of start here. What did we say? Actually, when you do a range of numbers, you want to use an in dash. So there's kind of three types. There's like a hyphen, an in dash, and an m dash. And hyphens are to hyphenate words. In dashes are used for a lot of different things, but a good one is, or a good example is like a range of numbers. You can use an in dash. If you do that, the typography nerds will, and the way that you do that is at least on a Mac, it's Option and then the dash key. So this was 1 to I think 33. We don't need that, so we can go. And then I think we said what product score. Whoops. Which we'll go ahead and put in the primary. And we're getting these kind of weird we're getting the frame names because they're kind of living out here without a kind of containing frame. So what we'll do is we'll just very quick, let's get these lined up first. This is probably back down to about 11. Ideally, if this was, if I was, making this specifically for iOS or Android, I would probably at least start with those typographic styles that are, pertinent to those platforms. All right, let's see. Let's get these centered up. Center them up with that. Move them up. That's still kind of a little bit big. Also, let's center that. Probably center this as well. I'll make this alignment a little bit quicker. All right, so Command Shift G is gonna put, whoops, wrong thing. Shoot, what is the shortcut now? I'm blanking. Command Option G, I believe, puts that all into a frame. So everything you have selected, Command Option G puts it into a frame. And we're gonna name this like, you know, whatever, Ring UI. So this is kind of like the complete, all-encompassing, you know, little UI component. We'll turn this into a component here in just a second. Well, we can do it now. Why not? Which I think is what, Command Shift K. So, you know, now when we create these instances of that, you know, anything we do here, you know, we'll adjust all those instances. Let's go ahead and name these a little more. Range, probably good enough. And then, I mean, range probably doesn't need to be in a auto layout. Nor does that, but we can put the two of those in a auto layout. So let's go. And to rename these quickly, you know, just to kind of keep my hands on the keyboard as much as possible. You know, I guess my shortcuts are showing up there. I'm using this cool plugin called Keystroke Pro. I don't have a license for it yet, but it's a, you know, a free trial, and it puts a little demo tag on there. But I think it's working out well, so I will probably buy this. Anyway, Command R is a quick way to, you know, get into the rename state of any of your layers. And then if you have multiple layers selected, you hit Command R. It will bring up this kind of rename, multi-rename dialog, and you have some pretty cool stuff. I don't want to make a tutorial on that, but very powerful stuff. Anyway, let's call this just label, whatever. So what I can do is create these, or put those into an auto layout. Maybe like label group, and probably put that about 4. And then heck, I can even put these two in an auto layout. And what I like about this is it just gives you a quick little UI. So I'm putting all these things in these auto layouts, and you know, the three kind of main you know, padding, you know, internal padding for left and right, top and bottom, and then like space in between. It's a nice little UI to be able to make these adjustments on the fly. So we've got the ring, the label group, and then we'll just, I don't know. This is not a tutorial in naming conventions by any means, but I do just like to have something other than the default to be a little bit more descriptive. So I've got my instance here, and then we're going to make 3 of these, which you guessed it, put those into an auto layout. So again, we can just very quickly make adjustments. This auto layout, we want to make sure that it's centered inside of, maybe not top and bottom, but definitely left and right. We can probably imagine it'll be up here or something like that. And then, so here's one of the things that this is kind of new for Figma, which I absolutely love. When there's a kind of, you know, for an entire selection that you have, whether it's all of this or just like this one individual instance, it shows me all the different colors that I have in that. So it makes it really easy to manipulate colors on little instances like this. And I'll show you what I mean. But so we want to change all of the red. We want to make this, you know, maybe kind of a yellow color. Let's see, take this down a little bit. maybe somewhere in there. Maybe a little bit darker because that's not going to read well on white, especially like in a bright environment. So now we've got that color, and of course we want to make that a color style, so we can always go back and quickly make adjustments to it. We'll just keep it simple and call that yellow. This one we're going to set up as green. Let's figure out a nice green. It's not too hard on the eyes and reads well on white. Yellow is a tough color, man. That's a tough color to get working in a UI on white. So I think skewing more to a little bit more on the red side, or kind of an orangier yellow is helpful. And then on this green, just give it a little bit of darkness, whatever. And yeah, we'll create a color style for that as well. Green. All right, so let's maybe put a little bit more distance between these guys. We'll put it 16. Now we also want to make the variations here. Let's go ahead and make this. Now there's kind of two different ways I could do this. If I knew I was going to be making a lot of screens, what I may do is actually kind of in my components organization, what I might do is, let's go ahead and do this now, because I do think this is kind of a cool feature of Figma. But what I could do is take an instance of this. Well, I guess I'll just use these. Well, let's just do this. I'll bring these over here because I'm going to think about these over here as my components, and then the instances will be on these artboards. So what I can do is I can take this kind of altered component, and then I can go in and again make this into its own component. So I'm going to call this ring UI. Ring UI slash red. This one is going to be ring UI slash yellow. And you guessed it, this is going to be ring UI slash green. No, I didn't make it actual component. There we go. So these are all instances of the red. So if you look in here, you've got kind of this nested, what's going on here? Why is that? Oh, that's the original. So you've got, these are nested versions of or instances of each other. So when you do that, you still have the, you can go back to the original and make these adjustments, and it will kind of propagate through all the other instances of it. But yet you still have the ability to have like these kind of preset, almost like states of a component. Hopefully that makes sense. But I think this will make it a little bit better for us in a kind of reusability point of view. So let's go ahead and get these back over here. Put these into an auto layout. What did we have? I think we had about 16 space in between. Get that centered up. Make sure we're top is fine. We'll go center. So now what I can do is go into this label. So another cool thing when you've got a component, I kind of like this. If I just hit command, it allows me to get right to that text layer, which I think is kind of cool. So this is 33. Again, we're going to use an in dash, 33 to I think 69, and then let's go 70 to 100. Also, looks like, I think if I just do it on this one, I've got some content being clipped somewhere, and appears to be at this level. So, and again, that just allows that to kind of protrude out of the frame. And it looks like this auto layout is clipping as well. So, all right, the other thing we got to change here is the, I think this was 40%. So you see, like when I go in here, because I have these as two separate text layers, I can just go to that exact label I want and only change, because the percentage symbol is not going to change at all. So yeah, I think we adjusted these over time. So I think this was 10% or less, around 40%, and then 50% or more. But for the purposes of this, we're going to keep those kind of there. Okay, so let's pull in some of this data here. So this person, if we look at, these two views in this kind of 2-week view, they were at 25%, 28%, 47%. And then at the 12-week view, they were at 14, 68, and 22. So, this is not any actual data, but we'll just kind of use that as a good guide. Now, the cool thing, the way we constructed these, we've got the percentage right here that we can put in. This is the percentage of kind of fill of that ring. So what did we say? 25, 28, and 47. So let's go ahead and make these 25. God dang it. 28 and 47. 28, 47. So, and then I can go here, change this, and it's awesome that you can change these inside at the component level, at the instant level, which is pretty awesome. So make that 28. You can see that fill adjust, and this one we'll set to 47. Cool. Now, here's where we made the decision. We got to make an adjustment here because I forgot. So the targets on each one of these are different, and I don't believe we can affect, maybe I'm wrong. Let's see here. Here's another thing I use all the time. Command / opens up, puts you right into the little search here. I use this all the time. Collapse layers, and it just kind of cleans up all this stuff, kind of like minimizes everything, and then you can kind of more easily find what you're looking for. It helps me all the time. Anyway. What was I doing here? Yeah, so this layer here, this target, we want it to be at 10%. So I can adjust it, but it's going to adjust it for everything. Can I adjust it at this layer level? I don't think I can. I cannot. So I cannot adjust the rotation here. So what I could do is make this pull this part out, which I think is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to pull the target out of that component, right? Whoops. So you see we've got a completely separate thing there. I'm going to make this target a component, and I'm going to bring it back in. So an instance of that is going to go back into this ring UI. And we can even leave it at the top. That's fine. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to name this target / 10%. I want to make another version of it, and again, I'm going to nest these. I want to make this target 40. I haven't adjusted any of these yet, but and then I'm going to make this one target. Actually, no, that's going to be. I'm going to go back to the original. And let's name this target 50. So these should all be one nested version back to the. So, and again, the nesting part, if I wanted to, for whatever reason, change this, so they're all going to point back to that original. We want to make that back to the primary. Now I want to make these rotate. So now I got to backtrack a little bit, but I want this to be part of something that I can rotate around the center of this 100 by 100, right? So if I draw at 50 and 50, and also just realize that that's not directly centered in there. So if that's 3, we need to make this at 48.5. Now we're directly centered. And then we're offset. Let's go, is it 16? I think that should be at 4 maybe. I don't know. Okay, so we want to make sure that this thing rotates around the center here. So we're going to go ahead and make another frame inside. I'm going to put that in there. Whoops, let's not do it yet. Let's make sure this frame is 100 by 100. And we're going to just call this like axis, just so we give a little bit of meaning as to, you know, it's there for some purpose. So if some other designer later is in here and maybe they're trying to clean the file up, you know, seeing the name axis, maybe it will tell them that, hey, there's something going on here. Don't delete this. So let's uncheck the clip content, make sure that whole thing is visible. Gosh, I guess I'm thinking 2 steps ahead, and I'm talking about something 2 steps behind. So, because I just realized something that I did, and you'll see here in a second. But so what we want to do is we want to make this thing rotate to 10%. Whoops, we want it to go negative 10%, which is right there. And I just realized we're going to have the same issue. I can't rotate those because it's a component. So what I want to do real quick is just detach that. And I'm even going to ungroup it. So we just have the same axis. We're going to detach, forgot the keyboard shortcut, ungroup. Okay. So now these are all essentially the same thing. If I wanted to have some sort of like a nesting component, maybe I would take this original piece here, because maybe, you know, later we didn't want it to be, you know, rounded, you know, the edges or the corners rounded or something like that. It's a, you know, it's probably more hassle than it's worth to componentize that little piece, because we're only going to have these 3 places to make adjustments to it, but we could if we wanted. So that one is rotated at negative 10. This one we want at negative 40. Make sure I've got that selected, negative 40. And I'm doing this wrong. Not 40 degrees. I want like 10% of 360 degrees. I didn't think that looked right. So if we take 10% of 360, that would be 36, right? 36 degrees, but we want negative 36. All right, this one we want 40% of 360. I'm not great at math, so what I can do is 360 times 0.4, which is 144, but then I'll just put the negative in front of it, and that should be at 40%. This is starting to look a little messy, but we're going to clean it all up here in a second. And this one at 50%, well, this one's pretty easy. We want it to be at 180. Now, I could put the negative in front of there, but I think that would still be the same spot. Yes. Okay. Now, we've got those components set up. Back here, we want to make sure that these are all using the right, at this instance level, this is using target 10. We want this one to be using target 40. Something's wrong there. We're going to fix it though. And then this one here, we want the target 50. So something is going on. 100 by 100. 100 by 100. Why are we getting... Something is not lining up here, because this should be... I'm stumped. All right, let me think about this. Let's put a grid on this. Ooh, can I do that? Yeah. Not auto layout. That's not what I want. I want a grid. And we're going to go columns. We're going to do 1. Why am I not seeing that? I want the columns on this. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Column 1. Let's see, 0 or no. Let's go. What do I want? 2. Thinking live sucks. Let's see. What I'm trying to do is give myself some guides so I can figure out what the heck is going on. And I'm failing to. So I got 1 column, margin of 50, so that should put that in the center. Okay, cool. And I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to do it with a row. I should see that on all these, right? 1, 50, 0. Okay. Oh. Okay. It's because these are not nested. That's why. I was still thinking they were nested. What I can do, I think I can save this as a grid style, and we'll just call this 100 center, whatever. It's kind of a temporary thing, but this will make it a little bit easier for us. There. All right. Why is this? What's going on here? All right, I'm going to reset all these. What happened? Okay. Okay. That's what's going on. Somehow, I didn't even realize that. This is not centered. Maybe that was because of something I just did. Maybe it was centered. Okay, that's in there. That's centered. The axis, this should be 100 by 100. Doing some troubleshooting live on the air. This is probably riveting. Let's put this back to 48.5, so it's right in the center. I think we had it offset about 3 pixels or 3 points. That looks good, but I want the same thing for all of these. Let's do this. Well, no. All right, I got an idea. What I'm going to do, I'm going to have the rotation part is going to be at the instance level. This axis is going to be a component because I think that'll make this a little bit easier. And you may think that maybe we're doing a little bit too much on the component side of things. Maybe we are. I don't know. But this is live and this is unrehearsed, so we're going to do it that way. So let's go ahead and pull that out, make it a component, bring an instance in to the target 10, make sure it's aligned, and we'll rotate this negative 10, no, what did we say? Negative 36, right? That looks good. Let's go ahead and get rid of that and that. We'll bring a nice clean instance of that and a nice clean instance of that. And for this, we know this is going to be 180. Look at that. Okay, I must have just had something misaligned because this seems to be working a lot better. But I do like that we kind of came to this consensus to, consensus is not the right word, but you know. So now we have this kind of place where we can make adjustments to it if we want. But all right, this was what did we say? 360 times 0.4. I could do like negative 0.4. Whoops. Negative. All right. Look at that. I think we're there. I think we finally got there. We've got that. Looks about 10%. that looks about 40% and then 50%. Now I will call this out. This was something I remember thinking about a lot. This was, this project was 2-3 years ago. But the thing that we were not really able to convey here, well, a couple things. Let me go back to the original. All of these, ideally, I don't know if the math is right, these should all add up to 100% because this was basically everything you buy, how that stuff falls into these categories. So what we ultimately ended up doing, let's see, I don't know if I have let me pull this up because I think this may be relevant. This is more of like a UX or kind of data visualization thing. What actually got shipped, and I don't love it, but we showed all of those things as a whole. It's a piece of a pie, right? The values are the same. What's challenging with this, and we ended up getting rid of the 2 and 12 week thing, if you can see here. But when we were still thinking about it in terms of being able to look at this data visualization over 2 different periods, anytime this green would change, the starting and end points of all the other ranges would also change. So it just made it was a terrible thing to be able to compare. So that's why we wanted to show both. It's like, hey, first of all, this like when you look at everything you bought, this is kind of how it breaks down. Now let's look at those things in more, you would swipe this over. This is a much easier way to compare. Now there's no toggle between like a 2 and 12 week period. So I think, some of the thinking got carried over and maybe it wasn't 100% necessary for this, and then what you could do from this screen is you could, tap in there and it would show you a list of all the things you purchased that fell within that 70 to 100, range. So hopefully that made sense. But actually I want to go back. So the thing that was challenging here is this was kind of like a finite place. Really what we were trying to say was, hey, anything more than 50% is what you want to shoot for. And I don't think this UI doesn't really tell that. Aim for around 40%, that's kind of telling. And then aim for less than 10%. I don't think this really says that. It's putting a mark there to kind of give you a reference point, but I don't think it very clearly illustrates kind of like what this label says. So anyway, it's just kind of part of that evolution of product design. Anyway, back here, I just realized we don't have a name on this. What are we going to call this? Ring UI, whatever. A couple other things I just want to touch up here. Maybe. I just feel like these are still a little bit too big. So let's go back to the source. Make this a little bit smaller. We want to have a little bit more of a hierarchy here. I'm going to turn the grids off so we can get a nice clean. And the other thing too is, this is the target for this is a phone. So I think it's always really important to be able to look at it on your phone, which I'm going to pull up here. Now, I think to you guys it's going to look pretty similar, but I've got the phone here in my hand. And I just want to be able to kind of see, the type sizes are pretty small. One of the cool things on these devices, though, modern device, whether it's iOS or Android, it has the ability to have dynamic type sizing. So it allows you to get away with, designing and knowing that your customers will be able to make adjustments if necessary. But you still should be, I think, cognizant to, type sizes, obviously. These are probably a little small, but. All right. Is there anything else I wanted to do here? Let's go back to the chat. All right. Are there any questions at this point? I'm going to throw this out and give you guys a second here. Any questions? I think I've lost everybody. There's no one watching. Okay, no questions. So we're gonna keep going. I think I'm maybe too slow in my demonstration here. Let's see if there's anything going on in here. Not a lot. Okay. Whatever. All right. Weight is lifted. No one's watching, so I can continue to screw up here. Collapse all this stuff. So let's do this. Let's just put this smack in the middle, right? We're going to think about this in terms of two-week and 12-week views. And let's just give ourselves a really easy button to be able to toggle these that we'll be able to animate around. 2 weeks. And heck, let's use my advice from earlier. I'm going to use auto frames so that we have two separate labels. I think we're going to need a secondary color. Let's go ahead and make these primary. Let's do call this secondary. Whoops, create a new, whoa, that looks weird. There we go. Let's see, label secondary. Cool. And we can probably bump these up a bit. I'm trying to think if I want those center. I don't think it really matters in here. So we're gonna make these little buttons. Let's even give them a little background. Give it a fill. We'll just do it this way for now. Make it really subtle. So what I'm doing here in the fill, when you go into the hex value here, you can actually use the arrow keys to just go up and down. I think you can go, no, you can't go left and right, but you can just affect, this is, I think it's RGB, so red, green, blue. So these two values represent the red, these two values represent the green, and these two values the blue. So you can adjust, just one, or you can adjust all of them. You can also hit one letter, F, and then tab, and quickly, or if I did 3 and then tab, it would be all threes. If I did, F3 tab, it goes F3, F3, F3. Anyway, cool stuff there. Let's see. So I'm going to go all Fs, and we're going to darken these just a little bit. And then we're going to round the corners. And we're going to increase, I think 16 is probably not bad. Whatever. Let's put these in an auto layout. Maybe it's like 32 points apart. Center that. Whatever. This is just kind of a made up UI. And we're doing this so we can have two things to toggle between. And hey, let's go ahead and let's do it the right way. Let's make this thing a button component. And we'll call this active. And then we're gonna make a nested version of that. We're gonna pull out an instance, create an instance of it, and we're gonna recomponentize it. So we've got that nested instance there, and we're gonna call this maybe inactive. So I'm doing this a little bit backward. Usually I start with the inactive or the default state, and then do a variation of that to be the active, but it doesn't, I don't think it really matters. We want these to be, I spelled it wrong. That's why it doesn't show up in the right. Let's fix that. And the background color we're going to set to, first of all, let's give it a name. We'll give it a style. Background. This is, well, this would probably be like a tertiary because it's so light. Yeah, we'll just do that. We'll call it tertiary. Here we don't need it because it's inactive. So let's pull this out and let's pull this out. Call this 12 weeks. Put these back into an auto frame. What would we say? 32. Center it there. We're going to center it there. Yeah, that looks good. So now we got these two big buttons, 2 weeks, 12 weeks. Kind of shows active. You know, maybe we'd have an active color in there. The background would be it. Anyway, another thing I want to do, let's change this guy. We want to set a background color for this. Let's call this, maybe this is like secondary. Actually, I think this would be tertiary, at least for a light mode. But let's set this thing to be, I want to rename this from secondary, or from tertiary to secondary. There we go. Okay, so now we've got a background secondary, background tertiary. And I think the tertiary maybe is just a little bit too dark. Maybe about right there. All right, enough fiddling here. Let's get to the fun stuff. Let's get to the animation. As I said here, and fiddle even more. Oops. I want to see what this looks like on my screen. So I'm going over here to the phone. And we've got a little error on there. Let's relaunch. Had a rendering error on Figma Mirror. All right, my credit card purchases are popping up on live YouTube. That's always cool. Okay, so let's see if we can remember how to animate this thing. I have used Figmotion very little. I spent about maybe 10 minutes with it when I just wanted to see. I wanted to verify if these values were animatable. Able to be animated. Figmotion. Actually, I think there's a little bit more setup. Select a frame. Yeah. Let me set up a little bit more here. So we want to have, let's get two, well, no. All right. I'm kind of thinking on the fly here. Let's set this up like maybe I normally would if I was going to prototype this out. So let's call this view 12 weeks. And this button would be active, and this button would be inactive. And what I would probably do is go here in the prototype, and I would drag this over, and we would navigate to, it would be instant. Maybe I would probably start with, I would try the Smart Animate and see what happens. And then I want, let's see, this one to point back. So I've got two views. They're pretty much identical except for these button changes. But if we go back to the original, I think we were showing, let's see, 14, 68, and 22. 14. Oops. Let's do this. Let's, this target is getting in my way. It's making it kind of a pain. Whoops. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna set these targets all to lock. Actually, I can do it on just this one, right? Okay. Now I should be able to more easily get in here. What did we say? 14. I think we said 68 and 22. 14, 68, 22. Cool. But we also need to adjust these. This would be at 14. Yeah, we don't need to do the math on these. 68 and 22. So now if I go, and I'm going to bring this up in the, hopefully this will show. Okay. Ooh, I still got it on my phone. We don't want that. We want the chat here. All right. So if I click on these, ooh, Smart Animate is looking at the names and it's animating the placement of it. So we can fix that. What Smart Animate does is it looks for it looks for the same layer name in two different instances. And I think because, button active and inactive is swap, essentially Figma just thinks that it's moving when I guess in some, yeah. So we're going to fix that. We're just going to call these buttons, even though they're instances of button active and button inactive. We just want it to be the same in these guys. Button. Now let's see what happens. Yeah. Okay. So you can see it's just it's not like there's no motion to these rings. So it's, I feel like it's just begging to be like animated, that sweep, around the ring. We need to figure out a way to animate that. I think that's where, Figma is not, I've got to imagine it's on their radar because it seems like a pretty, well, I don't want to say simple, but it seems like a thing that you would want in the Smart Animate. Smart Animate is really cool. It's really powerful. Like for instance, I just made these, we're going to go backwards a little bit, but I do think this is kind of cool. I'm going to go ahead and detach. How can I do this quickly? What I'm going to do is I want to have this background like physically move across the screen to the active state. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just recreate that background, but I don't want it in that auto. Yeah, let's get rid of this auto layout. And we're going to get rid of the background in here. I'm going to do the background manually. Whatever. Push that back. We're going to call this background. Put it right next there. How tall are these? They are 44. Perfect size for a button. So make sure this is 44 and line those up. What was the width? That's the other thing. Really, I really don't want these to be auto layouts, honestly, because I want the width to be the same between them. So let's go ahead and just remove that auto layout and just make these. And I know I could make them static. Let's just make them like 150, whatever. We want this to center. Not quite there. I guess I could put the labels in there, but I'm just making this more difficult than it needs to be. So let's get rid of the 2. We're just going to have 1 label inside. Center. Let's detach. Yeah, why is that still? Get rid of that. There we go. I've screwed this all up. We can fix it. Let's ungroup. Put this back to 44, 150. All right, now I should have 2 buttons that are looking good. Background, we want to be the same size. All right, but in the 12-week, we want to, nope, selected the wrong thing. Background. We want it to be over here. Now, what I was trying to do quickly was show you the kind of the power of the smart animation. 2 weeks, 12 weeks. This should be 2 weeks, 12 weeks. You know, Smart Animate's really nice. It kind of tweens the it tweens in between, you know, it makes up the right keyframes. It's awesome. It's very powerful, but it doesn't animate everything. And one of the things that I wish it would animate are these the rings, the fill of the ring. All right. Let's see if we have anyone in here. There's no one in here. That's fine. I'm going to keep moving. Okay, so 38, 57, 38, 57, 196, 57, 196, 57. I just aligned those up a little better. Let's figure out how to animate this in Figmotion. Looks like, okay, so I used it on another computer, so this looks like Figmotion is not currently in focus. Okay, there we go. Now it is in focus. So we've got these ring UIs. What I think might be cool is imagine like when you first open the app and it's like going out and fetching your data, you know, imagine these rings are all set to 0. So I think maybe we'll do that. So let's go out here to about what, 300, maybe 400 milliseconds. I think that's almost half a second, 500 milliseconds. Let's start with the red. What's going on there? And maybe what I can do, no, I can't do that. So UI red, fill color, rotation, opacity. What? Can I not adjust? So it doesn't look like you can adjust these in components. This might not work. Maybe you can't do components with Figmotion. Let's see here. Okay, that's okay. We can work around that. So, you know, from a kind of product design development process, I would probably keep this prototype live. Also, hate this background color. There we go. It looks a little better. Nice and subtle, so you can't see it. That's the modern way, right? Yeah, it probably doesn't even show up on the screen very well. But what I'm going to do is, just for the Figmotion part, I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to just detach all of these components. And that's fine, and it's going to lose its connection back, but this is, maybe this is just kind of exploring what this animation might look like, and you can have a conversation with your developer or whatever on, two different ways, on two different levels. Here's the originals, and then here's what I was thinking for the animation. Anyway, so let's go ahead and detach all of these. Detach instance. I think there's going to still be the target, which is fine. We can probably leave those as components, right? Yeah. So now let's see what happens when we launch Figmotion. All right. So let's go back out to, what do we say, 400? I think 300 is probably enough. So we're going to go to 300 milliseconds. And we want to go ahead and create a keyframe because we know we want it to get to 25%. But why does it say Figmotion is not currently in focus? It is in focus. Maybe. Circle arc, I think. Hopefully, is that right? If I go back here and hit 0, rotation, fill color, circle arc. I don't know why it's saying it's not currently in focus. Remove the auto layout. I don't think that would be an issue. Let's try this again. Ooh. I'm going to name this so I know which layer it is. 2 weeks animation. We'll just call this Ring UI animation. All right. Ooh, I don't love this. I don't know what it, I don't know if it's like the keyboard shortcut viewer that I have. Something is causing this not to be in focus, and I wonder if that is making it not work. Or maybe it's the streaming software. I don't know. But let's try this again. It looks like it's working. It highlights that like fill XY with rotation. I don't think it's, you know what? Let's just see which things. Can I do that? A lot of these I know are not right, but go ahead and set keyframes for all of these. I'm doing some trial and error here. Well, unfortunately, there's no one watching right now, so I can't reach out to the audience for I don't understand why it's saying that. All right. Well, maybe I can't go much further in this live stream. I was really hoping to get this to I was really hoping to get this thing animated, and I'm sure circle arc is that's what I want. But every time I select it, what? Oh, that layer completely went away. What did I do? Okay. All right. Well, I think I'm going to end this now. I'm going to explore. I'm going to see if I can figure this out. Maybe this will be, maybe I can come back later today or tomorrow or something. I was really hoping to get this to work. Figmotion. If anyone, I know no one's watching this live, but if you if you know how to use Figmotion, if you've experienced this before, I'm going to try one more thing here. It's selecting it. I can see it moving. Fill. Okay. It's there. Can I delete that? Remove. Okay. All right. So linear 360. Okay. So that's the position. Okay. And then there's like the ease. Okay. That's cool. But I'm like almost certain as soon as I do that, it says it's not in. Yeah. Anyway, I give up. I have a slight feeling that it might be something related to my current setup with OBS and this keyboard. I don't know why I think that, but because I did this on my laptop just the other day, and I was able to get these layers to animate. Not this specific file, obviously. Maybe I've got something else going on here that's messing it up. I'm not really sure, but hopefully there was something insightful today. I'm still getting used to this live streaming stuff, kind of designing off the cuff, trying to figure out what to talk about, what things to go into detail about, what things not to. I think I'll get better with it over time. I just got to keep doing this. Hey, if you liked what you saw, if you didn't like what you saw, let me know in the comments. I would appreciate a thumbs up and maybe a subscription if you want to see more of this stuff. That lets me know that there's maybe an audience for this stuff, and I'll keep doing them. But other than that, I don't think there's a whole lot to go over today. So let's go back over to the stream. No one's watching live. I had a couple of people in here today, so that was cool. But I think once I kind of butchered their names. You know, that was probably kind of dumb. Anyway, this is Nathan Gross. I am signing off. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see ya.